Welcome to the complete Awilix guide, updated for the Season 6 meta. I've done this one in the past, but there's been some huge meta shifts since Season 5 with new items and gods, and it's definitely time for an update. So let's get into this one with the contents of the guide. First up, we'll cover Awilix's basic playstyle and what she's all about so you can decide if you want to learn her. Then all of her abilities in depth, what they do, and the best ways to use them. After that, we'll cover items and builds, where I'll discuss all of my favourite items for Awilix and a build example. And finally, tips and tricks, where I'll give you some little tips to up your game on Awilix. So let's dive right in with her basic playstyle. So Awilix plays like your typical ability-focused assassin, but also has some quite unique elements that make her super fun to play and learn. She definitely has a very high skill ceiling despite being fairly easy to play at a basic level. She does very high burst damage with good CC, as well as some mobility to boot. So with that covered, let's move on to Awilix's abilities and the best ways to use them. So firstly, Awilix's passive initiative is very simple. Anytime you strike first from out of combat, you gain 30% bonus physical power for 2 seconds. So this basically increases your burst potential when initiating on enemy gods, and also increases your clear speed on jungle camps if you're hitting them from out of combat. Other than that, it's not really something you need to pay attention to too much when you're playing, it's just a nice bonus if you are like ganking someone from out of combat. Summon Suku is her second ability. This allows you to mount a panther, which gives you a big movement speed boost, but will also slow you down when strafing. So basically, if you're moving forwards, you'll be much faster, but if you're moving sideways, you're much slower. At any time, you can either right click to cancel the panther, which will not trigger the cooldown, but still takes the mana cost, or you can leap from the panther, which will activate the cooldown and deals damage to all enemies in the area. So this ability is really nice, especially when you're jungling as Awilix. You have to be careful not to spam it too much. You don't want to be mounting up between every single jungle camp because you will run out of mana. But it's really great for getting across long distances or responding quickly to ganks or objective calls. You can also of course use this to chase or run away in fights, using the movement speed and or the jump to outrun your enemies. Awilix's 2, Feather Step, is a really interesting one. When activated, you flip over the last enemy you hit within 1.5 seconds, rooting and crippling them, preventing all movement and doing damage to them. However, depending on where you are in your current auto attack chain as Awilix, it will do bonus damage, and on the final swing it also hits in an AoE. This is sort of hard to explain with words, so just take a look at me using it in the background here and you'll probably understand it a bit better. So this is Awilix's bread and butter. A lot of her damage, especially early on, will come from this ability. When using the 2 times damage, it will also hit in an AoE, so that's great for jungle camp and minion wave clear as well. Also, one final note, while you're flipping the target, you are untargetable, so you can use this to dodge certain abilities, like a Vulcan's Magma Bomb for instance. Onto the 3, Moonlight Charge. This allows you to send Suku forward, dealing damage to all enemies in a long line, and if the enemies are hit from the side or the back, they are knocked up. So there's not much to this ability other than positioning yourself correctly so that you can get that knock up, which interacts with her ultimate that we'll cover now. So Gravity Surge allows you to pull the closest enemy that is either jumping or knocked up from the air down to you, dealing damage when they hit the ground and granting yourself a massive steroid of attack speed and physical power, as well as immunity to roots, slows and knockbacks. It's also worth noting that you will still get the steroid effect even if you don't pull anyone in with the ability. Oh, and also you can pull enemies through walls as long as they're within range of the ultimate. This ultimate can also be cleansed with beads or through other means, which will prevent the target from being pulled and taking damage, but they'll remain knocked up and you will still get the steroid effects even if it's purified. So this is really where Awilix's kit gets its spice from. There's nothing else like this in the game, and it's nice to have a comp built around the ability, but not completely necessary. It also shuts down gods that are heavily reliant on their leaps, such as Odin when he tries to engage with the Bird Bomb. Having at least one other knockup on your team to enable this ability is really nice when you're playing Awilix, so here's a list of all the gods currently in the game as of Persephone's release that have knockups for this. For the Guardians, Bacchus, Cerberus, Ganesha, Geb, Jormungandr, Kuzenbo, Sobek, Sylvanas and Jingchen. For Warriors, Jack, Cuchulainn, Erlang Shen, Hercules, Horus, King Arthur, Nike, Sun Wukong, Tyr, and Vamana. For the Assassins, Mercury, Pele, Ratatoska, and Susano. For Mages, Hebo, Kukulkan, Merlin, Poseidon, Sol, and Vulcan. And for Hunters, Anhur, Apollo, Chiron, Huyi, and Jingwei. Alright, so with that covered, let's move on to Awilix's item choices and a build example for jungle. So for starting builds, you of course need Assassin's Blessing, assuming you're playing her in jungle. Then I recommend tier 1 mace and 1 health and 1 multi-potion. After that, you need your boots, which you pretty much have 2 effective choices for right now, those being Talaria boots and Warrior Tabi. The choice here is really up to you. Talaria offers more mobility, Warriors offers more damage, take your pick and roll with it. After your boots, you want to finish that tier 1 mace you started with earlier into a full item. Right now I recommend the Crusher for the insane early burst damage and generally good stats, offering early power, penetration and some attack speed. But you could also potentially finish this into Jotun's Wrath as well, that's not terrible either. From there, your build can take different paths depending on how you like to play and the current match. So here's my pool of items that I generally pick from after I finish Boots and Crusher. So Jotun's Wrath, as I said early on, is always nice for the CDR and the other great stats that it provides. Hydra's Lament is really good on Awilix since she tends to use auto attacks in between her abilities quite well and makes good use of the passive. Transcendence is great if you're ahead and snowballing so you can get the stacks up easily. If you're behind though, I wouldn't really recommend this as much. I'd get something else instead, maybe Hydra's or Jotun's. Brawler's Beatstick is your go-to option to counter enemy healing, but of course against a team with little or no healing, you don't need this. Stonecutting Sword can be really nice for Awilix given Featherstep's interaction with her hit chain. Since you have to basic attack a target twice before using Featherstep for maximum damage, you get good use out of the Stonecutting Sword's passive. Titan's Bane is great for dealing with tanks if you need to. It's not always essential, but if you find yourself fighting tanks a lot, it can be a huge damage boost to get Titans. Bloodforge, similar to Transcendence, is a great item if you're ahead and already snowballing, since the passive requires you to land a lot of kills. But in that scenario, it's really good. Just if you're behind and you're not getting many kills, I wouldn't really recommend it as much. Magi's Cloak is my go-to defensive choice on Awilix, giving some health and defenses, but you're mostly buying it for that life-saving passive that can prevent a hard CC from affecting you. Void Shield is nice as well if you're looking to specifically target physical gods, giving some health, defenses, power, and penetration all bundled into one item. And finally, if you want to be extra tanky, you can try Mantle of Discord. This is a more beefy but more expensive defense choice and can often save your life at the cost of some of your damage. Alright, so with my item choices covered, let's wrap up with a full build example for Jungle Awilix. Start with Assassin's Blessing, tier 1 mace, 1 health and 1 multi-potion. Then grab Warrior Tabai, finish the mace into the Crusher, then get Jotun's Wrath, Hydra's Lament, Stonecutting Sword, sell your Blessing for Magi's Cloak, and if the game goes long enough, you can sell your boots to buy Titan's Bane and get the Elixir of Speed. Your 2 relics for jungle should be Beads and Blink, in whichever order you prefer for your playstyle. Alright, so with that covered, let's finish off the guide with a few tips and tricks to up your game on Awilix. So firstly, don't be afraid to use the ultimate just for the steroid effect. You're not always going to be able to land a good pull, and sometimes for burning objectives or for sieging towers and phoenixes, having that bonus power and attack speed is really nice. Also concerning the ultimate, a good way to activate it if you can't get the knock-up is to engage onto a target, feather step over them, which puts you behind them, and then knock them up from behind with Moonlight Charge and pull them back down with Gravity Surge. You can even squeeze in an auto attack or two while they're in the air, depending on your attack speed. This combo will usually delete most squishies that don't use beads throughout the earlier mid-game if you can pull it off. You can activate feather step from abilities, not just basic attacks. So you can use your 3 from a decent distance away and still feather step as a gap closer or finisher. The range on Feather Step is 30 units, which is much longer than standard auto attack range for melee characters, so you can actually close a decent gap using this. You can also engage straight with Suku and immediately Feather Step as a finisher or to avoid an enemy ability. For example, if you see a Ymir going to freeze you as you jump in, instantly activate the 2 and you can get the immunity frames to dodge that CC and continue fighting. But that's about it from me for this guide. As always, if you did enjoy, then please do leave a like. These guides take a long time to produce, so any support is greatly appreciated. But I'll catch you guys later. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.